I will start by telling you how my life changed forever. The 16th of the 6th, 16. I remember looking at the calendar and thinking, 16, 6, 16, that's got to be a lucky date. That must mean that England are going to beat Wales in the European finals of the football competition. So I was ready to settle down and watch the football for the afternoon. But before I did that, I had to go and get my car because my car was in the garage. So I thought I'll get a bit of exercise while I'm at it, put my trainers on, jog down for my car, come back up, watch the footy, job's a good one. So I ran down for my car, and as I got to the bottom of the hill, my phone went, and it was my sister's husband. And I answered the phone, and I took a call that changed my life forever. He said, Jo's been attacked. And all I can remember is that I started shaking. And I'm shaking tonight. And I can't remember when I stopped shaking. So I went to the guy at the garage, Steve, and he said, "Are you all right, Kim?" I said, "No, I don't think I am, Steve, to be honest with you." I said, "I've just taken a worrying phone call." I said, "My sister's been attacked, and she's our local MP. I don't know if you heard anything, have you?" And he just looked at me and said, "To be honest, Kim, no, I'm really sorry, but I don't watch the news or listen to the news because it's way too depressing." So the 16th of the 6th, 2016, didn't turn out to be such a good day for me after all. And whilst I am really happy to be here this evening, to be part of this amazing event, the reason I'm here is not a happy one. That's because on that day, my sister, Jo Cox, the MP for Batley Spen up in West Yorkshire, was murdered. She was shot and stabbed to death in the street by a right-wing extremist 5 minutes from where I live. Now, it's very difficult for me to say those words, and I think it always will be. And I am a long way from understanding and processing what's happened to my family and to our life. When something so unbelievably horrific happens, everything that you think you know and understand changes. And my life has changed beyond recognition. I've been on the telly, I've met famous people, and I've been asked to come to amazing events like tonight, but all because of the worst possible reason. And there's still so much that I can't make any sense of, and I don't understand. But one thing I am clear about is that I will not be beaten by what has happened to us. It's not who I am, and it's the last thing my sister would want. So whenever I have the strength, I will choose to do something positive with what has happened to us, because it's always been my belief that whilst we can't always choose what happens to us in life, we can, where possible, try and choose our response. So my choice is to not give in to the anger, the hatred, the despair, and the self-pity that I feel. And believe me, I feel all of those things. But to instead try and create as much positive energy and action as possible from the worst possible circumstances. So I now work as an ambassador for the Jo Cox Foundation, the charity that was set up after Jo was killed. And I also chair an amazing group of volunteers up in Batley and Spen, the area where Jo was the MP, the area where we grew up, the area where myself and my mum and dad and lots of our family and friends still live. But I think the other really important thing for me to remember is that I have got absolutely no agenda in any of the stuff that I'm doing. I had a great life and I was very happy, despite Jo's constant enthusiastic encouragement to do something bigger and you should be doing more. I was very happy making a difference in my own way. But as we've said on many occasions in the last few years, we are where we are. I'd like to start, if I may, by telling you a little bit about Jo. When Jo was killed, she was an MP. But to be honest, for me, this was way down the list of what she was. Jo was a daughter, a wife, a sister, a mother to two of the most adorable children you could ever hope to meet. She was a friend to many people. She was a strong woman, and she was a humanitarian, basically a thoroughly lovely person. And I've yet to meet anybody that didn't like Jo. She believed, as I do, in a better world, and she fought for it every day. She believed in equality, inclusivity, and humanity, and that we should all work together side by side to make a difference for everybody, irrespective of some of our different backgrounds or different beliefs. Before becoming an MP, Jo worked all over the world, in countries where people often had little food, little water, and often very little hope. But she was determined to make a difference to people with lives less fortunate than her own. And one of the reasons she applied to be the MP for Batley Spen was to come back to her Yorkshire roots and reconnect with the community where we grew up and make a difference to the lives of people there. Because in her own words, Jo was a proud Yorkshire lass. And from Batley to Bosnia and from Syria to the Spen Valley, that's exactly what she did. Now, I've thought a lot in recent months about what made Jo, Jo, and indeed what makes me, me. And I think a lot of it comes from our upbringing. We were blessed with two wonderful parents who instilled in us a core set of values and beliefs and always made us feel loved and welcomed and wanted. Unfortunately, this childhood was also accompanied by very bad hairstyles and matching outfits. Anybody who is a similar age to me will recognize that beautiful basing cut there. But these things weren't drilled into us. It was very simple principles, like treating each other with respect and kindness and compassion, sometimes agreeing to disagree, compromising, and very simply treating other people how you would wish to be treated. We were taught to value people, not possessions, and focus on inner happiness, not just material wealth or success. In true Yorkshire style, we were also taught, sometimes, if you haven't got anything good to say, keep your gob shut. But these things weren't drilled into us. They were more inherently included as part of our everyday lives, and they stayed with us throughout our adult lives. Having said all this about Jo, she was a great person, but she was far from perfect on a day-to-day basis. She was scatty and absent-minded. She often was late. She never had the right clothes to wear or any money. So we used to help her out on many occasions. She forgot to take her bike on a cycling holiday. True story. Fell asleep on the train coming up from London on several occasions, and even had to borrow a fiver from another MP in the House of Commons canteen because she forgot her purse. I'm not going to tell you who that politician was, but I think a lot of people in the room will not be sad to hear that he didn't get that fiver back. So I could talk all night about how great Jo was, and she really was. But it's really important for me to remember Jo, and you only need to look at the tributes that came in from across the world when she was killed to see for yourself how special she was. But it's always important for me to remember that it was Jo, and more specifically her murder, that brought us together this evening. As I say, I had a great life. I didn't need or want anything to change. But as we've said, we are where we are. So, I come on to more in common. More in common was an expression that was taken from Jo's maiden speech in Parliament. And Batley and Spen is a really diverse community, lots of people from lots of different backgrounds. But what Jo observed as she went round the community, knocking on doors and meeting people, was that despite these differences, we have got more in common than that which divides us. And she said that in her maiden speech in Parliament. And more in common is an expression which has come to resonate as a beacon of hope in difficult times. People still send me photographs from different countries where it's been put on a wall or the door of a lift. And I think people really need to feel that more in common principle now more than ever. The group that I chair up in Yorkshire is this amazing bunch of volunteers who came together in the aftermath of Jo's murder. And they did what good people often do in the face of a tragedy and a crisis. They came together and they worked really hard to ensure that the damage that was already done wasn't made any greater. They pulled together, and we've put on some amazing events and done some amazing things in our community that I am so incredibly proud of and so incredibly grateful for. What I didn't know at that time was that other more in common groups popped up at different places in the country. And one of the favourite examples of this for me is More in Common Lambeth and More in Common Boston. So More in Common Lambeth is a group in London, and they had the highest Remain vote in the EU referendum. More in Common Boston in Lincolnshire had the highest Leave vote in the EU referendum. Now, instead of viewing each other as sworn enemies, Do you know what these communities did? They reached out to each other. They wanted to try and understand what was going on in their communities as to why that vote had happened. And they now have coach parties and trips to go and visit each other and have actually become really good friends. That's the embodiment of the more in common principle. One of the things that we do is around bringing people together. And at the heart of the more in common philosophy and ethos is our flagship campaign, The Great Get Together, which I hope some of you may have heard of. We had to take the very difficult decision as to what we did on the anniversary of Jo's murder. And I wouldn't blame anybody for shutting up shop, closing the curtains, locking the door, and not doing anything. But we didn't want to do that. We wanted to do something very positive, and we wanted to do something very Jo. So we launched a national campaign, and we asked people on the anniversary of when Jo was killed to organise events in their communities, to pull together in the way that we know Jo would have loved. And people embraced it. So on the 16th to the 18th of June, 2017, a year to the day that Jo was killed, thousands and thousands of events took place up and down the country. Barbecues, picnics, concerts, sports days, street parties, iftars, dog walks, you name it. People did it, and they came together in such a positive way. It was inspirational, and it got us through what was a very painful weekend. In 2018, we moved the Great Get Together weekend to the 22nd of June, which was Jo's birthday. And that was representative of the fact that we wanted to focus on how Jo lived and not how she died. We know that there are serious issues in our communities, and we have to be realistic about that. Communities now are disconnected in a way that they didn't used to be. And there is some nostalgia around that, but there also is a strong narrative that there was a time when you knew your neighbours and your kids could play out till it was dark. And there's lots of issues associated with this disconnection, whether it's hate crime or knife crime or gang culture, loneliness, social isolation or extremism. So what the Great Get Together is a platform for people to tackle those issues in a really positive way by bringing people together in their communities. And in 2018 and 2019, it happened again. People went bonkers for the Great Get Together. Events took place from Orkney to Guernsey and everywhere in between. Nowhere more so than in Batley Spen, of course, where we have the Run for Jo, where we get 1,000 people running through the woods together, or the Stepping into the Future Schools event, where we get 22 schools with kids from all sorts of backgrounds coming together and marching through the town centre. One of the most interesting ones for me was the Batley Iftar. Now, 3.5 years ago, I didn't know what an iftar was. I had no idea. I needed to be educated. And where we live, there's a big Muslim community. And the problem we had with the first Great Get Together was it was during Ramadan. So I was like, so we're organising events with cake and lots of food, and half the community is not going to be able to eat anything. Whoa, 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 this is not feeling good. So then the suggestion was, well, why don't we do an iftar? So we sat down, one of the most challenging meetings I've ever had to host. It won't work. People won't come. The Muslim community won't come. The non-Muslim community won't come. The women won't come. The kids won't come at that time of night. And I went, right, well, we're doing it, so should we crack on? And we optimistically catered for 250 people. We did an open-air service in Batley Town Centre, the site of which has never been seen. And 1,000 people turned up. And it was one of the most spiritual, beautiful evenings I have ever had the honour to be a part of. We ran out of food, and the guy who owns the local Italian restaurant was running down the steps with big pots of pasta, trying to feed everybody. It got to midnight, and nobody wanted to go home. It was amazing. And then what happened on top of that, the day after, we worked with the local rugby league club. You might have heard of rugby league. It's quite big up north. But we've got a very good relationship with the Batley Bulldogs, the local rugby league club, and Jo knew them, and they loved Jo. So we said, right, let's fund a free game. Let's get the whole community to come to this game of rugby together, and we'll have it as a memorial match as part of the Great Get Together weekend. So we put it on, and I got sat next to one of the imams that I'd met at the iftar. This was his first rugby league game. He had no idea what was going on. And he kept looking at me, Kim, Are we winning? Are we winning? And I was like, yes, we're winning. Clap now, clap now. And he absolutely loved it. They had the highest crowd they'd ever had and the most diverse crowd they've ever had as well. It was a really fantastic afternoon. And I've become very good friends with that imam, and he's one of our More in Common team. So there's just a few examples of what we've done locally. And that was replicated, as I say, nationally, and there were some amazing events in London and all over the country. But how does that all fit in with tonight? Well, Jo was a woman of action, as am I. So my call to action to you all this evening is for you to get involved in the Great Get-Together. We decided that once a year wasn't often enough, so we now have the Great Winter Get-Together, which we do in December. And we focus this on tackling loneliness and social isolation, an issue that Jo felt passionately about. We have the hashtag mince pie moments. But do not panic, other festive treats are available. Because not everybody likes a mince pie, as I discovered last Christmas. And we ask people, just connect with people. Knock on your neighbour's door. Make sure they're doing okay. If someone's lost a loved one, if someone might be on their own, someone might be having a tough time, reach out with a mince pie and a cup of tea or a glass of wine and connect with them. So, that's my call to action. Whether it's the Great Winter Get-Together that we've got coming up in December or the Great Get-Together that we'll do on Jo's birthday next June, I urge you to organise something in your communities, your schools, your businesses, your places of work. Because for me, if every person in this room organises something across the Great Get-Together, that is the best way of remembering Jo and the principle of more in common that she gave us. And unfortunately, I suspect, in the coming months, it may be needed more than ever. So to finish, I urge you to go away from this really special evening with strength, unity, and compassion, and the determination to make a difference with the time that we are lucky enough to have. Hold your loved ones close. And remember, we all have choices. At some point, we all have to choose whether we want to be part of the problem or part of the solution. And I also urge you, in our great communities, up and down this amazing country that I am so proud to call home, please remember, as my sister Jo said in Parliament, we are far more united and have far more in common than that which divides us. Thank you.